They felt like they were laced with urgency, calling me to pay attention. I wanted to ignore them, but the feeling of being watched kept creeping back. Around 8, I decided to step out for a moment. I walked toward the break room, hoping a cup of coffee could shake off this oppressive atmosphere. I almost made it there when I overheard snippets of conversation drifting from the hall. It was Susan and Mark, another coworker. Their voices were low, hushed, like they were sharing secrets they didn't want me to hear. It's not just her," I caught Susan's voice saying. "I don't think we can hold it back much longer." My heart raced. Hold what? I strained to hear more, but then they stopped talking. A heavy silence followed. They must have sensed me eavesdropping. I turned the corner and casually approached them, trying to appear nonchalant. "Hey guys, what's up?" They both jolted, as if I'd startled them. Their faces were pale, like they'd seen a ghost. Nothing important," Mark replied too quickly. "Just wrapping up on a project." His eyes flicked over to Susan, who was now avoiding my gaze. I could tell they were hiding something. Feeling frustrated and anxious, I decided to confront the situation head-on. "I know something strange is going on around here. You can tell me." The tension in the air thickened. Susan looked at me, her expression wavering. It's just a stressful time for everyone," she said. "You shouldn't worry about it." I pressed. "But I can't ignore this. You both are acting differently." "Maybe you should just stay away from the conference room," Mark said, and I caught a shadow of something in his eyes. Fear or concern? I couldn't tell. Fueled by their avoidance, I decided not to back down. "You can't just tell me to avoid it. I hear things, and I need to know why." Their faces shifted again. It was as if they shared a silent agreement, and suddenly the air felt charged. Susan took a deep breath. It's not safe. Things have been happening since you started staying late. We don't want anything to happen to you." Before I could respond, the lights flickered violently overhead. The sudden jolt sent both of them recoiling, and then everything went black. My heart raced, the silence closing in like a vice. I could hear their hurried breaths next to me. "Let's get out of here," I said, but fear made my voice shake. I reached for my phone, hoping to use the light, but it wouldn't turn on. Then I heard it again. The whispering grew louder, thicker, wrapping around us like a fog. It felt like they were chanting my name, urging me to comprehend something I couldn't grasp. That's when I felt a cold draft sweep through the hallway. It sent chills up my spine, and I noticed Susan and Mark were looking past me, their expressions frozen in fear. I turned to look, and that's when I saw it. A dark figure stood at the edge of the hallway, watching us. Panic surged through me.
Arremeto estava aqui, mais forte do que nunca, tomando conta de todo o ambiente. O cheiro concentrava-se como mistério, mostrando-me o que achar. Among the photographs, I saw familiar faces, my colleagues from the office. They looked happy, but their eyes seemed hollow, as if they were trapped in a moment that had never truly passed. "What is this?" I muttered, pulling out a picture of a group of people, gathered together in what looked like the conference room we were now in. Above them, a strange symbol was drawn on the wall, one that looked almost like the convoluted shapes I had seen flash in my peripheral vision during the late nights at the office.
"Where was this taken?" Mark asked, leaning closer. "That's definitely our conference room, but that symbol, it's not something I've seen before." Before I could answer, the box jolted again, this time spilling everything onto the floor. The journal landed open, and the pages flipped violently until it settled on an entry titled "Ritual of Binding." My heart raced. This is it. This might explain everything. As I read aloud, "The ritual of binding must occur under the full moon to seal something within the walls." A cold breeze swept through the room, extinguishing the flickering lights. Darkness enveloped us, save for faint glimmers that appeared at the edges of my vision. "Is it a full moon tonight?" Susan whispered, fear creeping into her tone. "No, it can't be," I replied, shaking my head. But deep down, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. Then a voice cut through the darkness, chilling my blood. "You should not have disturbed us." The figure appeared again, looking more solid this time, its eyes gazing directly into mine. I could barely breathe. "Get away!" I shouted, backing into Susan and Mark, who stood frozen in place. The air became thick with dread as the entity reached out a hand, and I could practically feel its malevolence. "Wait!" I yelled, trying to gather my wits. "What do you want?" It only smiled, a dark grin stretching across its face, and the room began to shake once more. The walls warped, as though they were closing in around us. "This is just the beginning," it hissed. That's when I understood. The awakening was not only within these walls, it was reaching for us, and we were running out of time. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the discarded box. The figure loomed closer, its form shifting in and out of the darkness. An awful sensation of dread settled over me. "We have to do something," I gasped, glancing at Mark and Susan, who stood frozen in horror. I don't know what to do," Mark stammered, his usually confident demeanor shaken to the core. Susan clasped her hands to her chest, eyes darting between the entity and the journal now splayed on the floor. "Just think," I urged, my voice barely above a whisper. "What can we use to—" The words froze in my throat as I caught sight of the symbol from the photograph. It mirrored the one drawn on the wall behind the figure, glowing faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Do you see it?"
É uma verdade fundamental.
That knife, what if it was a key to something much worse? A surge of darkness loomed, and I knew we weren't done yet. Before I could voice my thoughts, a new whisper curled around my ear, deeper this time. "You'll regret this." My stomach dropped. Whatever I had opened, it was far from over. The darkness settled back into a suffocating stillness. I strained to hear anything. The scratching had ceased. My heart thudded loudly in my chest, drowning out every other sound. My fingers still tingled from the shock of touching the knife, and my mind raced to comprehend what had just happened. "We need to get out of here," Susan said, her voice trembling. "Now!" "No, we can't leave yet," I insisted, pushing back against the rising tide of panic. "What if that knife is really important? We can't just ignore it." Mark glanced at Susan, then back at me. "But what if it's part of whatever we unleashed? We don't know how to control it." Before I could respond, the shadows in the room seemed to move again. A flicker of light caught my eye, reflecting off something behind Mark. I turned to see what it was, my breath hitching as the atmosphere prickled with an unseen tension. "Mark, behind you!" He spun around, but there was nothing.
Just the wall, the dusty floor, and the lingering echoes of our fear. You're seeing things. No, I felt something, I protested, but I couldn't shake the doubt that crept in. Was I imagining it? Had the fear twisted my senses? Suddenly, a loud crash resonated from the darkness. The noise reverberated through the room, sending us all jumping back. "What was that?" Susan gasped, her face a mask of terror. I don't know," I stammered, my pulse racing, "but we have to check." Mark nodded, and together we edged toward the source, the journal held tightly against my chest. The air felt electric, charged with a growing dread. Every step felt heavier, each breath more labored. As we reached the far corner of the room, a dark shape shifted, barely visible in the shadows. What is that?" I whispered. Then a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the gloom, locking onto us. They were deep and empty, devoid of warmth. I froze, unable to move or speak. Susan was right beside me, grabbing my arm tightly. "Run!" Mark shouted, snapping me out of my trance. Without thinking, we all bolted back toward the door, panic surging in my veins. The air around us felt alive, twisting with the weight of unseen forces. Tension crackled like static electricity. Just as we reached the door, it slammed shut with a deafening bang. I yanked on the handle, but it wouldn't budge. "It's locked!" I cried out, dread washing over me. "Help me!" Mark's voice was strained as he pushed against the door, but it held firm. I felt the cold air closing in, shadows pressing closer. I could feel the whispers rising again, slithering through the air like tendrils of smoke.
From the corner the knife, I saw the knife lying abandoned where I had dropped it. It gleamed ominously, as if beckoning me. "We need to get the knife." But even as I said it, I hesitated. What if it only made things worse? The shadows seemed to pulse, the darkness growing heavier by the moment. What do we do? Susan's voice was barely a whisper, filled with dread. Then the voices crescendoed into a cacophony. "You have disturbed us. Now you must pay the price." The lights flickered, and the entire room seemed to shudder. I could feel the ground beneath me trembling, and the way forward felt impossible. Something dark was closing in, breathing down our necks. And that's when I realized we were trapped in a nightmare of our own making. The room felt like it was closing in around us. Panic coursed through my veins, and every fiber of my being screamed to flee. But we had nowhere to go. I glanced back at the knife. It lay almost invitingly on the floor, bathed in eerie light. My instincts tugged at me. Was it a tool or a curse? "Mark, stop pushing so hard!" I shouted over the rising din of whispers and shadows. He was turning deep shades of red, muscles straining against the door. "It won't budge!" he yelled, a mix of frustration and fear in his eyes. I could see the tremors in his hands. "Then we need a new plan." My mind raced. The knife. We have to get the knife. Maybe it can help us. Susan shook her head, eyes wide. What if it makes things worse? We don't even know what we're dealing with. "What choice do we have?" I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "If we don't try, we'll just end up." "Captured?" Mark finished grimly, his attention still focused on the door. A shudder ran through me. That was exactly what I feared. Before I could respond, the shadows shifted again, more menacing this time. "You've awakened us," a voice hissed from the darkness, sly and ominous. "You will pay." The air grew colder, and I could see my breath forming clouds in front of me. "Hurry!" I shouted, darting toward the knife. The whispers intensified, swirling around us in a chaotic crescendo. I scooped up the blade, feeling the cold steel bite into my palm. A pulse of energy surged through me, unlike anything I had felt before. "What is this?" I murmured, turning the knife over in my hands. "It's just a knife," Mark said, voice trembling as he eyed it like a venomous snake. "What do we do now?" I looked at Susan and Mark, gathering my thoughts. "Maybe we need to fight back," I suggested, unsure if that was even a viable option. "What if this knife is the key?" Then something slammed against the door, shaking the entire frame. I stumbled, grasping the knife tighter for balance. "It's trying to get in," I cried. The whispers morphed into a chilling laughter that rattled my bones. "You cannot escape," it echoed, resonating through the walls. My heart raced as I glanced at the door, panic rising anew. The knife burned in my hand, the power coursing through me intensified, lighting a path through the dark. Jesharoth! The name echoed again, surging through the dim space, transforming from a whisper into a battle cry. The room shuddered violently, the shadows swirling into a tornado of desperation as the entity screeched, "You cannot bind what has no form." But as light blossomed, illuminating the walls adorned with symbols, the knife flickered brilliantly, casting the creature into disarray. The entity writhed, its snarls transforming into a wail, vibrating painfully through the air. The shadows began to flicker as the essence of Jesharoth recoiled from the light, straining to stand its ground. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the knife, illuminating the entire room. In that moment, I glimpsed something, a dark mass, chaotic and swirling, pulling back against the surge of light, as if being drawn and dissipated all at once. "Finish it," Susan urged, her voice piercing through the chaos. With one final thrust, we forced the knife deep into the aura of Jesharoth, shouting, "We bind you!" What followed was unimaginable. The room exploded into radiant light, the shadows screaming as they disintegrated into nothingness. The last thing I saw was the creature's twisted visage, contorted in rage, before it vanished entirely. A haunting echo shattering like glass. And then silence. As the brightness faded, I collapsed to the floor, breathless. The knife lay beside me, still glimmering as if charged with the remnants of its struggle. Susan and Mark trembled next to me, their faces etched with disbelief and lingering fear. Did we do it?" Mark panted, looking around the empty room. The overwhelming darkness felt like it had lifted, but doubt lingered. "I think so," I replied, standing shakily to my feet. "But what about the other spirits?" There was no answer, only an uneasy quiet hanging in the air, like the calm after a storm, yet the feeling of something left unspoken lingered in my chest. "We should leave," Susan suggested uneasily, glancing at the exit. "Yes," I agreed, my heart racing as we gathered ourselves and retreated toward the door, still uncertain of what we had truly faced.
We pushed through into the hallway, the office returning to its normalcy, but I felt the chill settle in the back of my mind. Things might be quiet now, but as we stepped into the lobby, a flicker of light off the corner of my eye caught my attention. The shadows seemed to swirl ominously, shifting as if guarding their secrets. I moved to the sidewalk outside, taking a deep breath, the cold air biting against my skin. Standing there with Mark and Susan, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Had we truly resolved the threat? Would it come back? "What do we do?" Susan murmured, staring at the building we had just escaped. "I don't know," I admitted softly, "but I won't forget this."
We walked away. They shunned the office behind, my heart like a prison. But in the depths of my mind, I knew the shadows were never far away. I had touched something that went beyond my understanding, and while we might have escaped, whatever we unleashed still whispered in the corners of the night. I moved to a different city a few weeks later, hoping to shake off the memories and re-establish normalcy. Sometimes I would glance over my shoulder, half expecting to see the figure again, the whispers threatening to spill from the darkness. But mostly I tried not to think about it.